Hello, everybody, and welcome back to REL Freedom, real estate leverage freedom with the goal to help you build time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. If you want to get started on your real estate investing journey or anywhere in real estate, check out our website, freedomthroughrealestate.com. That's freedomthroughrealestate.com. We've got lots of great information there, all of our episodes, blog articles, information to help you figure out what's going to be your best path inside of real estate. And today is a very, very special episode. So we're celebrating two big milestones, which happen within the same week. We've got episode number 300, and we're also celebrating our 5-year anniversary as a podcast. And so it's been 5 years since we launched this show. Actually, I think it's 5 years in 1 week, but it coincided really well with 300 episodes. For those of you wondering at home, how does that work? There was a period I did 2 episodes per week, and then got to be a lot balancing my job as well. So we cut back to 1. So that's how we got to 300 in 5 years. But honestly, I had no idea when I started the podcast where this would lead. I just really wanted to share conversations, stories, lessons that could inspire people to help them in their real estate journey. And here we are 300 episodes later. We've got listeners all over the world as well as the country here, which I'll share more about those stats later. And today we're going to go a little bit behind the scenes, share a little bit more about the origin story, why I started it, a little bit about my background, what I'm doing in real estate, and some other behind the scenes stuff, and then talk a little bit about the future. So if you've been with me since day one, or if this is your first episode, welcome. We're glad you stumbled upon us, and thanks for being here. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the REL Freedom Show, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. So first things first, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been a part of this show. Huge shout out to my assistant who works with me, Ella, or Jezreel as she goes by as well. I just want to thank her so much because this episode and this podcast would not be possible without her. And so she's been with me for probably close to 3 years now. So a lot of the posting that you see, the videos that you see are really a result of her. So thank her so much for what she's done. So that being said, I hope that this show has allowed you to learn more about real estate, learn more about people's stories. When I interview guests and we meet for a couple minutes before we dive into the recording, I say, hey, the goal here is I want to have a good story to inspire people to get into real estate or maybe see a path different from where they're on right now inside of real estate that they want to take, or they see some sort of, story of, hey, this person had a similar background. This person came from a similar field as I did, maybe had a similar mindset and got into real estate and had some success. And if they did it, I can do it too. And so that's really the point of the show here is to highlight great stories, to highlight people doing great things, and also to make it relatable. I want you to hear a story that you're like, yeah, I hear that and I think I can do it too. And I want to jump in. And so that's really the reason today why we exist and why we want to continue those stories. But kind of going back to the origin story. So for those that don't know me or don't know much about my background, I really am an operations person. And so I've been in real estate operations since 2014. Before that, I worked operations for a nonprofit for 10 years. And in the real estate side, I always told people, I was okay being the guy behind the curtain because we had agents on our team. I really wanted to highlight the agents and make sure that they were seen and people would hire them, right, to buy and sell real estate. And it was primarily residential real estate. And so we jokingly said I was the guy behind the curtain, and I didn't care if anybody knew who I was. I'm an introvert by nature, really, really high introvert. If you found me in a group of people, I'm probably off to the side just listening. But one-on-one conversations, obviously, I love people. I love having conversations, but you put me in a group of people, and I do naturally just kind of gravitate towards being introverted. So I was on this real estate team for 5 years, 6 years, and started my own team. So I realized here I am, somebody, I had spoke on stage for our brokerage at events, at breakout sessions. And so I had talked to many real estate admin, hundreds of admin, while being on stage. And people knew me for being the behind the scenes guy and knew me for being the ops and admin guy. But as I started my team, nobody knew me as the team leader or the agent. And so I was looking for a way to get out in front of the camera. And I also saw the importance of getting things on film, right? Obviously, it's only been 5 years, but even back then, I knew the importance of getting comfortable in front of a camera, learning how to talk, being on something like this, listening to yourself talk, right? I know it's a big fear for a lot of people, but for me, I knew I needed to get comfortable in front of people to be able to do that. And if people were going to come to the team, work with me, whatever future opportunities unfolded, I knew that I wanted people to be able to find me. And so it started with kind of that seed of how do I create something? Because I'm a process person, how do I create something consistent, something that's going to build and grow over time? You know, if I created short form content, which I do some of that, a little bit less of that now, I can do it or I can't do it, right? But if I have a weekly podcast, I know that I have to do it week in, week out. Now there's been a couple of, best of episodes that we've shown, but for the most part, for the better part of 5 years, every single week, there's been less than 10, I would say maybe 6 to 8 episodes where we've maybe done bests of, but otherwise I've had this going for 300 episodes in a row. And so I love that kind of scheduled, consistent thing that I need to do. Behind the scenes, it doesn't have to be consistent. I think I've done 4 episodes this week. Well, then next week I don't have to do a recording, or the week after I don't. So I'm always just watching the guests and the guest load, but I wanted to create something consistent. And so for people that wanted to see me or learn more about me, they could check out the podcast. And it's a way of selling yourself without selling yourself, right? I really don't like telling people what I do or, how great I am or stats and things like that. But if you go watch my episodes or if you go watch my videos, you can get a pretty good sense of who I am, what I stand for, and I can share great information too. So I've recorded, content on information. Hey, if you want to learn more about this thing, check it out. So I wanted to get some game film out there, get experience in front of the camera and get comfortable talking to people, asking great questions. And so I knew I wanted to interview people, but the funny thing is I said, look, I remember telling somebody, I don't want to do a podcast because everybody does a podcast. And I learned from Pat Flynn. So if anybody knows Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income, way back in the day, he ran a blog, but then got into podcasting. And so I was watching some of his content about podcasting. And the thing that really struck me is he said, look, when you die, your kids can always go back and watch you on video. And if I create content, they could do that too. But a podcast, something like that, it's a way to leave a legacy. It's a way for your family to go back and watch you and remember you. I know for me, like that would be awesome, thinking about some of my relatives that have passed away. Like it'd be fun to be able to go back and see stuff on video of them. And I thought if I could do this consistently, then it's something for my kids. Also, what it turned into is as I got more into investing in real estate, we're building a legacy for our kids. And so it's something where they don't have to do real estate. If they want to do real estate, they can. But either way, what we're building here is something that can be passed on for generations. And so on the content side, that really struck me. I'd love to have something like that. So that was kind of why I decided to turn it into a podcast. And then honestly, from a operations and logistics standpoint, it wasn't that hard. So you go to a website, get yourself syndicated to all the different podcasts, fill out some forms and some information. It takes a little bit of time, but then the process itself is not that hard. I can upload the episode and it pushes it all out to all the podcast players. And so I used to do the editing myself, but now we have somebody that does the editing, and it doesn't take a ton of time to continue to create this. It takes some planning and proactivity on the front end, but now we've got something cool, something that has stood the test of time. There's a ton of podcasts out there that have 5 episodes or 10 episodes because they're so excited about it, and then they give up on it and they realize it's harder than they thought, or it's not it takes more consistency than they thought. But that was the early stage. Now, at that time in my career, I had just launched a residential real estate team. And so I was thinking it's cool to interview other people inside of real estate, but the benefit was really coming back to hire me to be your residential real estate agent, or agents if you want to come join a team that I think is pretty cool. Here's this guy that's leading the team and here's what I'm doing. However, when I started to interview people and people that were doing bigger things on the investor side of real estate, my eyes were open that I can do this. I can do this too. And I think that's one learning for people is most people that are out there doing bigger things than you, they're not necessarily smarter. They're probably just have taken more action, which we'll talk about in some of the lessons learned. But I knew that I could do that. And so I started to see people that were doing this And so it helped me to learn. So I tell people, for me, podcasting is like double dipping and triple dipping my time. Number one, I'm making great connections. Number two, I'm adding value for them, giving them a chance to share more about their story, get their word out, get their message out. Number three, though, it's also helping me to strategize for my future and what I want to do. And going back to the networking piece, I can also connect people. Hey, I might not be interested in a particular asset class or a certain, area of real estate, but if I talk to somebody, I can say, hey, why don't you go talk to so and so? This is somebody that's doing that at a high level. And so there's a lot of that value out there. And then obviously it's for you guys, the listeners, being able to provide some inspiration, some stories, some direction on what to do in your career. I think there's a ton of value in that. And so I listen to podcasts when I'm going for walks, when I'm in the car, driving around. I think it's great. It's a way for me to continue to learn and grow in my car. And so I think there's a ton of value there. And so over those 5 years, my message has changed. Now, here we are. I started a residential real estate team when I first started this podcast, and here I am pretty much exclusively working with investors to buy apartment complexes and some other investment stuff too, some short-term rentals, some small multifamily, some consulting, different things like that. But my life has completely changed in 5 years in terms of the direction of where I want to go. Now, I still would say I'm still just getting started on the investment side. There's so much more that I want to do, but this podcast has been a phenomenal opportunity for that. So hopefully that gives you kind of the backstory of why I created it, what I was planning on doing with it. But yeah, as many things do, they evolve over time. And instead of stopping this podcast and launching something else, I created a vision that was wide enough, helping people create time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. That's broad enough that I can take it where I want to go. And so we have agents on, we have admin staff on, we have investors on, we have flippers on, we have entrepreneurs and other spaces on, but it's all inside of the real estate space. And so you get a mix of stories, a mix of backgrounds. So that's kind of the heart of why we did this. And for those of you listening, maybe early on in your journey, that's what we're going to continue to do, is to share great stories of people that are doing this stuff. I was nervous. I had a ton of doubt. I watched myself on video and hated it, hated how I looked. So for those of you out there that are considering a podcast, considering doing more on video, I had all those same reservations and feelings, and I just pushed through it. And so it's okay. I view this as like my stage behind a camera, right? I can be on stage and I want to do more stuff on stage. And yet I'm here on behind camera talking to you, the viewer, as I look into my camera here. For those that are listening, I'm looking into the camera, talking to the audience, helping you guys with those concerns you have, those uncertainties you have, not knowing what to do in real estate, not knowing who to go to for help. I want this to be a resource for you. So those were the early days. That was the plan. The vision has changed and grown, but what stays the same is I'm just as excited about helping people inside of real estate. And so if I can be a connection for you, if I can, if there's a guest that you want to see or listen to, I love to help people. I'm excited when people are excited to be on the podcast, and when they post, hey, I was super excited to be on the REL Freedom podcast. That just really excites me and gets me jazzed up to know that I'm helping people accomplish their mission of getting their word out about whatever they're working on as well. So some cool stuff. I also tell people, I want people to have game film out there of me, right? I think more than anything, I'm less concerned about the business that comes in, right? The ROI of doing the podcast. The ROI of doing a podcast isn't good, at least right now. I've spent way more money than I've made on the podcast in terms of direct dollars. Now, that being said, the nice thing is it helps to earn people's trust more quickly. So as I do work with investors, and it also provides credibility. So as I work with investors and I say, hey, I'm on a podcast, here's my podcast, check it out. Like I said, I don't have to sell myself. They go listen to the podcast. And it's so cool to hear. I sometimes follow up with clients, hey, want to see how things are going? And I hear people say like, oh, wow, things must be going well for you because I've been listening to the podcast. And so it's that kind of connection point, I think, that has been one of the most helpful things. Is you can go check out and find out who I am. And if you want to work with me or you like connecting with me, great. But I don't have to give you my pitch deck. I don't have to, run down the list of all my qualifications. You can go find it and you can go listen to me and probably find out more just in a conversation that I have with somebody, kind of how I operate and how I act, and hopefully the values that I have, and that stuff comes across. So I think for me, kind of that game film, if I'm an athlete, I want to have my mixtape out there, my highlight tape for college coaches to come see, or pro coaches or scouts to come see. And here, that's what this is for me. This is my game film for people to check me out, see who I am, and hopefully build and earn some trust with people. Are you looking to get started or scale in real estate investing but don't know your next step? Are you overwhelmed thinking about finding deals, analyzing deals, doing due diligence, and managing properties on top of it? Go ahead and push the easy button and invest with us. Real estate investing is what we do full time. We've done dozens of deals with hundreds of doors. We have the knowledge and experience to handpick the best deals that most investors can't find. We've got large off-market deals all the time where you can hopefully find returns and economies of scale that you just can't find on your own. The best thing is it's 100% passive to you for less capital than you put down trying to acquire a property on your own. Don't let this year go by where you don't make the leap, add to your portfolio, or you just sit in analysis by paralysis. To find out more, visit freedomthroughrealestate.com and click on invest. You can book a call and learn more there. So get to scaling your portfolio now with us by your side. So that's some great lessons that I've had. You know, one of the things that I want to get into here is let's share some stats, some cool stats about the podcast. You know, I never would have imagined, here I am in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Early on in the podcast, a lot of the listeners, when I would go in and check, it would show they're from Minnesota, and the podcast kind of stat service that I use doesn't necessarily give all the little towns, but it was a ton of stuff from Minnesota. But the funny thing is so going back now, looking at all of our episodes, actually only 78% of the listeners are from North America. And so we've got 8% in Australia, Oceania. We've got 7% in Asia. We even have 46 downloads in South America, which is our lowest continent. But South America, for whatever reason, hasn't caught on. But as you look to Asia and down around there, we've got a lot. So in terms of countries, 74% of our listeners are in the United States, 8% Australia, like I said, 3% in Canada, 3% in Singapore. And then we've got a handful of them that are 1%. In terms of cities, as we go and we look at top downloads in cities, Brisbane, Queensland is actually number 1 for downloads. Number 2 is Los Angeles. No surprise there, a large city here in the United States. But then we've got some other states that are intriguing. We've got Missouri, we've got New Jersey, Wyoming, Virginia, Georgia, and then actually after that, Minneapolis. So, you know, quite a few people in other cities and areas have found the podcast and listened to the podcast outside of Minnesota. So Minnesota is probably 10 or 12 in terms of the list. So pretty cool to see where all of those downloads come from. In terms of top episodes, it's kind of been a mix of early days. We had some great episodes, and then we've also had, you know, some recent ones that have done well. But as I go and I look at most popular, hands down, we did a regular episode, and then we did a best of episode. Michael Elefante, for those that don't know, he does short-term rentals, very, very popular. I had actually had him, reached out to him because I wanted him to be on episode 100 for me, and he said yes so quickly that we actually had him on episode 89. So he didn't make it to 100, but I was reaching out to him with the goal of being on 100. But his original episode and even the best of are actually our top 2 episodes that we've had for downloads all time. So great resource for short-term rentals. Other top people that we've had, Brian Carruthers. So he's an entrepreneur. He works with a company called Legal Shield and helps a lot of agents and entrepreneurs as well with different things. So he's a very well-known entrepreneur, fantastic. And then we've got some people that have done tax liens. So we had an episode of somebody acquiring properties through tax liens, entrepreneurial stories, mobile home parks. You know, those are kind of some of the big episodes here. So yeah, we've had, you know, of our top 10 episodes, a couple of the early ones, we had episode 9, episode 37, episode 180, 189. So some of those. And then a recent one here, episode 279, Vince Gethings, who $100 million in assets and owns 6 businesses. So some really cool stories. Jeff Hotz owns a We Buy Ugly Houses franchise. That one did really well. So just cool stories, like I said, of different entrepreneurs doing different things, just sharing their stories. And so that's kind of where we're from in terms of downloads. That's some of the episodes that have been top episodes. You know, other than that, kind of what's it like running a podcast? Sometimes working with a podcast guest is a little bit like herding sheep. You know, these are entrepreneurs that are on the go. A lot of times, you know, they're not great at details. And so they might, you know, miss the podcast They might have put in an email that doesn't sync to their calendar when they book podcasts, or because they're busy people, life happens and stuff comes up. And so we're constantly kind of rescheduling episodes, canceling schedules. I show up on a podcast and the guest doesn't show up on the podcast. And then I reach out to them, and usually they're apologetic and get something on the schedule within the next week, and then are amazing. But it is a challenge, right? You're working with very busy people. And like I said, people where details aren't necessarily naturally the first thing that they're good at. And so that's kind of the back end, some of the fun stuff that happens. But for me, I always try to keep 2, 3, or 4 episodes out, recorded, scheduled, on the books, and then I just keep going. And we have a 2, 3, 4 week lead time, so depending on how close things are, we might schedule 2 or 3 guests in the same day that record, and then we're good for the next month. So it is quite a balance, but that's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. And then finally, I just want to close with some of the action items. So some of my top learnings that I've had running this show: number one, by far, you don't know what you're going to like until you try. So taking action and getting in and taking action. A great example of this is right now, my son is going through basketball tryouts. And so much like a lot of kids, right, they're deciding what sports they want to play. And so my now 11-year-old plays basketball, plays football, and plays baseball. Well, for him, he's still kind of at the spot where his favorite sport's the one that he's playing. But for some people, that's not the case. And they're trying to decide, like, do I want to play this sport or not? Some people now this year for basketball, so this is coming up on year 3 now where they have a travel team. There's people that haven't played competitively, aren't necessarily great at it, but they really love it. There's people that haven't played it before, but their friends are playing it, so they're joining and having fun. And then there's people that have played it, realized, you know what, basketball's not for me, so I don't want to do it anymore. Or people realizing basketball is a great sport, but I don't necessarily want to do it at a highly competitive level that travel is, so maybe I'm just going to do rec league. So to take that example and translate that to you, how are you going to know what you love doing inside of real estate unless you start doing it, right? The best way to find out is start doing it, or find an easy way in. Just get yourself in the industry, get yourself involved in something you're interested on the side, or help somebody out as a way to learn if you're going to like it, right? So you're not going to know whether, I'm not going to try out for an NBA team with no experience, right? Because the NBA team's going to look at me and be like, well, Mike, what else have you done? Well, I've studied it a lot. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, so I know a lot about basketball. I know the rules of basketball, and I know what I'm supposed to do. I know the defenses, I know the offense, and all that stuff. So why don't you hire me to be on your team? And they're going to say no because you haven't played, right? Well, I mean, I did play up until high school, but I haven't played at that level. And so you're going to have to get in, get some experience, maybe at a lower pay scale than what you want, maybe something on the side, maybe doing something for free. But that's how you're going to find out if you like doing it and if you're good at doing it. There's also a difference between what you like doing and what you're good at doing. They may not necessarily line up. And so you may decide to do something you're good at and don't like to start to find something that you like that maybe you're not as good at yet, but you're going to get the experience to get better. So you've got to get in it to find out if it's something that you enjoy doing. So that to me is lesson number 1. Kind of in the same side, fortune favors the action takers. I prided myself growing up on being a relatively good student, right? I really focused on grades and my college prep scores and my class rank to get into a good school. And then I got into a good school and I went into entrepreneurship, and I realized everybody that was kicking my butt in entrepreneurship were all the kids that didn't really care about school, didn't try hard in school because they're out doing other things. They're taking action on other things. The thing I was taking action on was getting good grades. And so fortune favors those action takers, those people that are out there doing it. You're never going to have 100% certainty on anything. So if I'm investing in something or I'm making that leap, I'm not going to know if it's going to work with 100% certainty. And I can listen to podcasts, I can study books, I can talk to a lot of people, but I don't know if it's going to work 100% until I do it. And so there's that piece in your gut, there's that hole in your gut where you're going to have to jump over it and say, I'm going to try it anyhow. And that leads me to my next lesson, which is learning how to problem solve and pivot is a learned skill from practice. If I don't cover any problems, or if I don't go through any problems, how am I going to get better at problem solving, right? Now, I can take a lot of analysis and hopefully mitigate my problems, but if you're going to get better and you're going to get sharper, you're going to have to go through problems, right? A professional athlete goes through adversity. They go through injuries. They go through life change. It sharpens them and makes them stronger. And so I'm going to come out a better investor because I've gone through problems and challenges. And then two, learning how to pivot. If something goes wrong, what's in my toolbox? What are my one, two, or three things that I can do to pivot to help solve a problem? Well, then the next time I'm in that situation, I might be able to use those tools that I used last time, or maybe I uncover some new tools to use to learn how to pivot and take action in a different way to solve a problem. But problem solving needs to be learned by solving problems. And so you can't have 100% certainty. You're going to get better at where you're going by solving those problems. And then kind of a couple of other fun facts. Most of my guests, I can pretty confidently say this, unfortunately I don't have stats behind it, was inspired to get into real estate or to do more in real estate from Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant. So if you haven't listened to those are two of the most fundamental books that help shape your mind as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. And so those are key ones. And then the other stat is it feels like half the people I talk to are in Austin, Texas. So if you're listening to this in Austin, Texas, you maybe have been a guest on my podcast. You maybe have worked at a company based out of Austin, Texas that I've talked to on the podcast, but it feels like everybody that I know on this podcast is in Austin, Texas. So it's a great playground to be in. If you want to go where entrepreneurs are and movers and shakers in the tech space and real estate space are, Austin is definitely an awesome place to go. So there's the episode 300. We talked a little bit about kind of origin story, tips, why I got into real estate, what you should be doing and thinking about real estate. And that wraps it up. So that's episode 300, 5 years of podcasting. Once again, thank you to you guys. I couldn't have been here without you. If you want to check things out, learn more, freedomthroughrealestate.com. That's our website. That's got most of our stuff on there. But thank you to everybody. Thanks to the guests that shared their wisdom, friends, family who've supported me along the way. I'm so grateful for you. But we're just getting started. We've got another 300 or more on the horizon here. Bigger conversations, great practical insight, stories that are going to help challenge you and inspire you to do even more. And so with that being said, here's to the next 5 years and hopefully 300 plus episodes. So thanks for being in the journey along the way. We'll talk to you in the next episode.